2,500 years ago, the Buddha gave his students a daily practice that most people today would find strange. Every morning, they sat quietly and reminded themselves, "I will die. I do not know when. It could be today." They practiced this every single day, because when you stop pretending you have forever, something in the body shifts. The grip loosens. The argument you carried all week loses its weight. The person you have been meaning to forgive, you forgive them. You pick up the phone and call someone you love. A quiet freedom opens in the chest, and the day becomes vivid, almost luminous, because you finally see it as it is. Notice your breathing for a moment. The air comes in, and the air goes out. You have been doing this your whole life without thinking about it. One day, that rhythm will stop, and somewhere in you, underneath the busyness and the plans and the things you still want to do, you already know this. There was a man, an ordinary man with a family and a home, who understood this so deeply that what happened on the night he died has been passed down to this very day. Now, get comfortable wherever you are. And if you feel like it, let us know where in the world you are listening from. There is no hurry tonight. The house had been quiet for 3 days. The servants moved through the rooms without speaking. They carried water and clean cloth in the way that people carry things when they know the carrying itself is the only useful thing left to do. The food that had been prepared sat untouched in the kitchen. The children, grown now, with families of their own, had come from neighboring towns and gathered in the main room, sitting close to each other the way people sit when they are waiting for something they cannot stop. In the back room, on a low wooden bed, a man lay still. His name was Citta. He was a householder, which meant he was an ordinary person, in the way that the world counts ordinary. He had a home. He had a family. He had a business. He had lived his life in a small town called Makikasanda, and most of the people in that town had known him their entire lives. He was the kind of man that neighbors came to when they had a dispute they could not settle. He was the kind of man that visiting monks chose to stay with when they passed through the area. He was dying. The illness had come the way illness comes for people who have lived a long time. A slowness in the legs first, then a heaviness in the chest, then a day when he could not rise from the bed, and the family understood, without anyone needing to say it, that this was the beginning of the end. Citta had been many things in his life. A merchant, a father, a man who was generous, deeply and consistently generous, opening his home and his wealth to monks and nuns and teachers for decades. The Buddha himself, in one of the rare moments when he named specific laypeople as examples, had called Citta the foremost among all lay disciples in teaching the Dhamma, the path of understanding that the Buddha had opened for the world. This is worth pausing on. Among all the people who followed the Buddha's teachings without becoming monks, all the kings and merchants and farmers and mothers, the Buddha said that this man, Citta, was the one who understood the teachings most clearly and taught them most skillfully. He had never shaved his head or put on robes. He had never lived in a forest or spent years in silent retreat. He had lived a full, ordinary life, married, raised children, run a household, dealt with the 1,000 small difficulties that come with being a person in the world. And yet the Buddha, who spent his days surrounded by monks and nuns who had given up everything for the path, said that this householder's understanding was the deepest among all the lay people he had known. Now that man lay on a wooden bed in a back room while his family waited outside. The room was warm. The lamps had been lit early because Citta's eyesight had been failing in recent weeks, and the family wanted the room to be bright for him even though he had stopped opening his eyes for long stretches. The air carried the scent of sandalwood. Someone had placed a small dish of it near his bed, the way families in that part of India did when death was near. It was a gesture of care and of helplessness. When there is nothing left you can do for someone you love, you light incense. You keep the lamps burning. You sit close and wait. Citta's breathing had changed. Anyone who has sat with a dying person knows this change. The breath becomes slower and the pauses between each inhale and exhale grow longer, until you find yourself counting the silence, wondering each time whether there will be another breath. His children had been listening to this rhythm for 2 days. They had learned to recognize the longer pauses and to hold their own breath in response, an instinct so deep that they did not know they were doing it. It was on the 3rd evening, when the family was settled into the quiet rhythm of waiting, that something happened in that room that none of them were prepared for. Citta opened his eyes. His eyes opened fully, clear, present, alert, the way they had not been in days. He turned his head slightly and looked at a part of the room where no one was standing. And then he spoke. He spoke to someone the family could not see. His voice was quiet but steady, the voice of a man having a conversation, answering questions, responding to something that was being said to him. His lips moved with the precision of someone choosing their words carefully. His eyes tracked movement in the empty air. His daughter leaned forward. His son looked at the others with alarm. One of the younger grandchildren was ushered out of the room by an aunt who did not want the child to see this. One of the older relatives touched Citta's hand and said, softly, the way you speak to someone who is very ill, "Be mindful, Master. Stay composed. Do not let the mind wander." They thought he was delirious. This is what families think when a dying person begins talking to people who are not there. The body is shutting down. The mind is going. The brain is producing images and voices the way it does in dreams. Fragments of memory and imagination tumbling together as the systems that normally keep perception orderly begin to fail. This is what common sense would say. This is what the family standing around Citta's bed believed. They were wrong. What was happening in that room, invisible to every person standing in it except the man on the bed, was this. Beings had gathered. The texts call them devata, a word that means something close to shining ones, or beings of light. In the Buddhist understanding of the world, these are not gods in the way that other traditions use the word. They are beings who live in realms that the human eye cannot see, beings whose existence is longer and more refined than human existence, but who are still, like everything else in the world, subject to change. They are born. They live for a very long time, and eventually they die too. These Devata were connected to the trees and groves around Citta's home. They had watched this man for decades. They had seen him open his home to monks. They had heard the teachings he offered to his neighbors and visitors. They had felt the quality of his mind, because beings in their realm can sense the quality of a human mind, the way a person standing near a fire can feel its warmth. And now they had come because he was dying, and they had something to offer him. The Devata spoke to Citta. They said, "Make a wish, householder. You have lived well. Your generosity and your understanding have created the conditions for something extraordinary. Wish to become a Cakkavati, a wheel-turning monarch, in your next life." This requires a moment of explanation, because the weight of what they were offering is easy to miss if you do not know what a Cakkavati is. In the Buddhist understanding of the world, a wheel-turning monarch is the highest possible form of worldly existence. A Cakkavati rules the entire known world, all 4 continents, all lands, all peoples. He does not rule through force or conquest. He rules because the power of his accumulated goodness is so great that the world simply aligns around him. A golden wheel appears in the sky to mark his sovereignty. 7 treasures come to him: a perfect queen, a perfect minister, a perfect horse, a perfect elephant, a perfect jewel, a perfect general, a perfect wheel of power. His kingdom has no war, no famine, no poverty. He lives for an extraordinarily long time. He is healthy. He is loved. Everything that a human being could want in a worldly life: power, comfort, beauty, influence, longevity, belongs to the Cakkavati. This is what the Devata were offering Citta as he lay dying. And if you have ever been sick, truly sick, the kind of sick where your body feels like a prison and every breath takes effort, you know how strong the wish for relief can be. To be offered a new body, a new life, a life of perfect health and unlimited power, while you are lying on a bed, feeling your own body fail. This is the kind of offer that would be almost impossible for most people to refuse. Citta looked at them. What happened next is why this story has been preserved for 2,500 years. Citta, lying on his deathbed, surrounded by a family who thought he had lost his mind, speaking to beings that no one else in the room could see, looked at the Devata and said, "Even that is impermanent. Even that will pass away. Even that must be abandoned. Even that." Even the wheel-turning monarch, with his golden wheel and 7 treasures and a kingdom that spans the world, even that will end. The body of the Cakkavati will age. His health will fail. His kingdom will pass to someone else. His treasures will change hands. And one day, after a life so long that it seems almost infinite, the wheel-turning monarch will lie on his own bed, in his own palace, and his breath will slow, and the pauses between each inhale and exhale will grow longer, and he too will die. Citta saw this. He saw it the way a person sees the ground beneath their feet, plainly, without effort, without needing anyone to point it out. The Devata were offering him the most beautiful house in the world, and he could see that every house eventually falls. They were offering him the strongest body in the world, and he could see that every body eventually breaks. They were offering him the longest life in the world, and he could see that every life eventually ends. So he said no. Try to feel the weight of that refusal for a moment. A man who is dying, whose body is breaking down, whose breath is slowing, who can feel the warmth leaving his own skin, is offered a new life of extraordinary power and beauty. He is not being asked to earn it. He is not being tested. The beings in front of him are genuinely offering him this rebirth out of respect for the life he has lived. All he has to do is say yes. All he has to do is want it. And he sees through it. He sees through the offer the way a person standing on a high mountain sees through the clouds below. The view is beautiful. The clouds are real. But from this height, you can see that they will move. They will scatter. The rain will fall and the sky will clear and the clouds will form again somewhere else, because that is what clouds do. And the mountain, the place where you are standing, does not move. Citta's understanding was the mountain. The Devata's offer was the cloud. And this is the question that the rest of tonight carries. What did this man know? What understanding, cultivated over an ordinary human life, without robes, without a monastery, without leaving his family or his work, allowed him to look at the most magnificent life the world could offer and see that it was still a cage? What did he see so clearly that even divine kingship looked small? Now, remember the family. They are still in the room. They have heard Citta speaking to the air. They have told him to be mindful, to stay composed. They think the mind of the man they love is dissolving. Citta turned to them. And here is where the story moves from remarkable to extraordinary. Because what Citta did in his final minutes was not what most dying people do. He did not talk about his pain or ask for water or comfort or reassurance. He did not give instructions about the business or the house or the distribution of his wealth. He did not express fear about what was coming. He taught. He looked at the faces of the people he loved, his children, his relatives, the people who had shared his home and his life, and he said, "I was not rambling. There are beings here, visible to me, who asked me to make a wish. I told them no." The family was still. They did not know what to do with this. Citta continued. He said, "Have faith in the Buddha, in the Dhamma, in the Sangha, the community of those who walk this path. Practice generosity. Share what you have." That was his final teaching. He did not explain why he had refused the Devata's offer. He did not describe the beings he was seeing or try to convince his family that the invisible world was real. He simply told them the three things that mattered most, the three things that had given him the clarity to see through the most magnificent offer in the world and say no. Faith, the teachings, generosity. And then he died. The room was quiet. The lamps were still burning. The sandalwood smoke drifted upward in thin, slow lines. The family sat with the body of a man who, in his final moments, had been more awake, more clear, more present than any of them. They had thought his mind was breaking apart. It was the most composed it had ever been. One of the things that makes this account so striking is its simplicity. In the texts that have preserved it, there is no commentary from the narrator. There is no voice saying, and thus we see the power of the Dhamma. The story simply tells what happened and stops. A man lay dying. Invisible beings offered him the highest worldly reward. He refused it. He taught his family. He died. The weight of the story does not come from what is said about it. The weight comes from what it implies. Because the question that the story leaves in the air like the smoke from the sandalwood, is the same question you might be asking now. How? How does a person get to that point? How does an ordinary householder, a man with children and neighbors and a kitchen and a garden, develop the kind of understanding that allows him to refuse divine kingship from his deathbed? This is not the kind of wisdom you acquire by reading a book one afternoon. This is not the kind of peace you arrive at by thinking positive thoughts. This is something that was built carefully, consistently, day after day, over the course of an entire human life. Most of us are afraid of dying. This is natural. It may be the most natural thing about being human. We are afraid of dying because we believe, deeply, instinctively, in a way that goes far beneath thought, that when the body dies, we die. That the person looking out through these eyes, thinking these thoughts, feeling these feelings, that when the body stops, this person stops too. The fear of death is the fear of complete ending, the fear of never existing again. And this fear does not wait until we are dying to affect us. It runs underneath everything, underneath the worry you carry about your health, underneath the grief you feel when someone you love dies. You can feel it in the tightness in your stomach when the phone rings late at night. You can feel it in the anxiety about time, the sense that the years are moving faster, that there is never enough of it, that something precious is slipping through your hands and you cannot hold it. Even in your happiest moments, there is a whisper underneath that says, "This will not last." That whisper is the fear of death. We just do not call it by its name. Citta did not carry this fear. He had lived with it at some point. Surely, everyone does. But by the time the Devatar came to him, the fear was gone. It was not suppressed or hidden behind bravery or discipline or denial. It was simply absent. The way darkness is absent from a room where a lamp has been burning for a very long time. What replaced the fear was seeing. Citta saw, through years of practice and attention, that the body is not who you are. The body is something you are traveling in. It is temporary. It is changing in every moment. Cells dividing and dying, breath entering and leaving, warmth fluctuating, fluids moving. The body you had at 20 is not the body you have at 50. The body you have tonight is not the body you will have tomorrow morning. The body is a river. It looks like the same thing from a distance, but when you look closely, nothing in it stays. You can feel this if you pay attention. Right now, wherever you are, your body is doing 100 things you did not ask it to do. Your heart is beating. Your lungs are expanding. Your blood is circulating through pathways you have never seen. Skin cells are dying on the surface of your hands while new ones form underneath. The hair on your head is growing, right now, at this very moment, by a fraction so small you will never notice it. The body is doing all of this on its own, without your permission, without your input, without your awareness. And one day it will stop doing these things on its own, without your permission, without your input, in exactly the same way. Citta watched this process in himself for decades. He watched the body age. He watched the strength leave his legs and the sharpness leave his eyes. And instead of turning away from the watching, the way most of us do, he turned toward it. He sat with it. He let the truth of change settle into his bones. And if the body is not who you are, if you are something other than this temporary arrangement of muscle and bone and breath, then when the body ends, you do not end. Something continues. In the Buddhist understanding, what continues is the stream of mind, shaped by everything you have done, everything you have intended, everything you have cultivated over the course of your life. The quality of that stream, whether it carries clarity or confusion, kindness or cruelty, wisdom or ignorance, determines what comes next. Citta understood this so completely that when the Devata offered him the most powerful body in the world, he could see that it was still just a body, still temporary, still subject to the same laws of change that govern every body that has ever existed. The offer was like offering a man who has learned to swim across any ocean a very beautiful boat. He appreciated the craft. He admired the design, but he did not need it. He refused because he could see. He could see that accepting the offer would mean stepping back into the cycle of birth and birth again, that he had been working his entire life to understand. The wheel-turning monarch lives a glorious life, and then he dies. And then, depending on the conditions of his mind at that moment, he is born again somewhere else, and the cycle continues. Citta had glimpsed what lay beyond the cycle. Through decades of practice, sitting with the teachings, working with his own mind, watching his own reactions, learning to see impermanence in everything he touched and loved and feared, he had developed a clarity about the nature of existence that most people never reach. He was moving toward freedom, toward a state of being where the cycle of grasping and losing and grasping again no longer operated, where the mind was no longer tossed by the waves of gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, where something still and clear remained, no matter what was happening to the body. This is what the family could not see. From their perspective, Citta was a dying man talking to the air. From his perspective, he was standing at the edge of an ocean he had been sailing toward his entire life, and someone was asking him to turn back and board a different ship. The gap between those two views, between the family's understanding and Citta's understanding, is the gap that exists in most of our lives. We look at our experience from the surface. We see the body, The house, the relationships, the work, the daily rhythm of eating and sleeping and getting through the day. And underneath all of it, running so deep that we rarely notice it, is a set of beliefs about what we are and what will happen to us. Beliefs that shape every fear, every hope, every grief, every anxious thought we have ever carried. Citta had examined those beliefs. He had turned them over the way a goldsmith turns over a piece of raw metal, looking at it from every angle, testing its weight, checking its composition. And what he found was that the beliefs most people carry about themselves, that they are their bodies, that they will end when their bodies end, that the only thing standing between them and annihilation is the continued functioning of their heart and lungs. These beliefs are not accurate. They are assumptions, and the assumptions create fear, and the fear shapes everything. When you remove the assumption, the fear has nothing to stand on. Now, what happened to the family after Citta died? The texts do not tell us in detail, but they tell us something important. They tell us that Citta's final words were teaching. He used his last breath to point his family toward the three things that had given him his own clarity: faith in the path, attention to the teachings, and the practice of generosity. This is worth sitting with. A man in the last minutes of his life, having just turned down the greatest offer a human being can receive, chooses to spend his remaining moments helping others. He does not talk about himself or describe his experience. He says, practice faith, study the teachings, be generous. These are simple instructions. A child could understand them, but they are the same instructions that, followed over the course of a lifetime, produced the clarity that allowed Citta to look at divine kingship and see through it. The simplicity is the point. The path that leads to the mountain is made of ordinary steps. And Citta walked those steps every day, for decades, without fanfare, without robes, without retreating from the world. He walked them while running a household, while raising children, while cooking meals and settling disputes and sitting with neighbors who came to his door with their ordinary problems. He walked them on good days and on bad days. He walked them when business was difficult and when his body ached and when the children were loud and when the world felt heavy. He did not wait for the perfect conditions to practice. He practiced inside the conditions he had. The path and the life were the same thing. He did not need to leave the world to see through it. This is what makes Citta's story so important for anyone listening right now, wherever you are, whatever your life looks like. Most people, when they hear about someone who faced death with perfect peace, imagine a monk in a cave somewhere, a person who has spent years in silence, a person whose life is so different from theirs that the comparison feels meaningless. That is for monks, they think. That is for people who have given up everything. That is not for me. Citta was not a monk. He was you. He was a person with a job and a family and a home. He dealt with the same things you deal with: difficult people, financial pressure, the needs of his children, the demands of his community. He lived in the world, and from inside that life, from the kitchen and the market and the bedroom and the garden, he cultivated an understanding so deep that it carried him through death itself. The Buddha knew this was possible. That is why he called Citta the foremost lay teacher. Citta was proof, living, breathing, dying proof that the path is open to everyone. You do not need to be extraordinary. You do not need to leave your life behind. You need to begin looking, honestly and carefully, at what you are, at what the body is, at what happens when you stop assuming that you and the body are the same thing. And the looking itself begins to dissolve the fear. This is the part that sounds too simple to be true, but it is what Citta's life demonstrates, and it is what every person who has walked this path reports. When you begin to look at impermanence, really look, not just think about it, something in the chest loosens. The grip you have been holding on your own life, the grip that gets tighter every year, the grip that wakes you up at 3 a.m. with a racing heart, that grip begins to open, finger by finger, simply because you have looked closely enough to see that what you have been holding was never solid to begin with. The body changes. The breath comes and goes. The thoughts rise and fall like waves. The feelings arrive and depart. Nothing stays. And when you sit with this truth, day after day, the way Citta sat with it, the fear of losing what you have begins to transform into gratitude for the fact that it is here at all. This is the freedom that was in Citta's eyes when the Devatar came to him. This is the clarity that his family mistook for delirium. And this is the understanding that allowed him to refuse the greatest worldly reward and spend his final moments pointing others toward the same path. Citta's clarity did not appear in a single moment. It was grown, tended, watered every morning and every evening, the way a gardener waters a tree, without drama, without urgency, knowing that growth is slow and steady and invisible most of the time. The Buddha knew that most people needed a starting point. He knew that telling someone look at impermanence is like telling someone look at the sky, too vast, too abstract, too easy to nod at without actually doing it. So he gave his students something concrete, a daily practice, 5 observations, 5 things that every human being already knows but has spent a lifetime trying not to look at. 5 truths so simple that a child could understand them, and so deep that sitting with them every morning can crack open even the most defended heart. He did not reserve these observations for advanced practitioners or monks who had been meditating for 20 years. He gave them to everyone, monks, nuns, and lay people, men and women, young and old. They were the ground floor, the first step, the thing you do when you wake up in the morning and sit quietly for a few minutes before the world begins to demand your attention. And they are the foundation of everything Citta built. You already know. You have known since you were old enough to notice that your grandparents moved more slowly than your parents. You have known since the first time someone you loved did not come home. You have known since the day you looked in the mirror and saw, for just a moment, your mother's face looking back at you. These are things you have always known. You did not learn them from a book. No one sat you down and explained them. They arrived on their own, through experience, the way the knowledge of gravity arrives when you fall for the first time. You did not need a teacher. The falling was the teacher. And yet, despite knowing, you have spent most of your life arranging things so that you do not have to look. We all have. Think about how your mornings begin. The alarm goes off. You reach for your phone. There are messages, notifications, tasks, a schedule that is already running before your feet touch the floor. By the time you sit down for your first cup of coffee, if you sit down at all, you are already inside the stream of doing, planning, responding, moving through the day's demands as though this particular day, this one, is guaranteed. And somewhere underneath all of it, below the to-do list and the meeting at 10 and the email that needs answering, there is a quiet voice. A voice that has been speaking since you were old enough to understand what it was saying. You will age. You will get sick. You will die. Everyone you love will be separated from you. And the only thing that will remain is what you have done with the time you were given. That voice is not depression. It is not pessimism. It is truth. The strange thing about truth is that ignoring it takes more energy than facing it. Think about how much of your daily life is organized around avoiding these 5 facts. The creams and the supplements and the exercise routines that are partly about health and partly about the hope that you can slow down something that cannot be slowed. The insurance policies and the savings accounts and the plans for retirement, all of them built on the assumption that you will be here to use them. The way we celebrate birthdays with parties and laughter instead of sitting quietly with the fact that another year has passed and the total is getting smaller. None of this is wrong, but underneath all of it is a tremendous effort. An effort so constant that we do not even feel it anymore. The effort of looking away. And the practice the Buddha gave 2,500 years ago is simply this. Stop looking away. Sit down. Be quiet. And let the truth arrive. He called them the 5 observations. 5 facts that every human being already knows but has spent a lifetime avoiding. He gave them to his students, monks and nuns and lay people alike, and he asked them to sit with these 5 facts every morning. Before anything else, before the day begins. Before the mind starts building its story about what needs to happen and what might go wrong and what should have been different, sit with what is true first, and then live your day from there. The first observation is about aging. I am subject to aging. I have not gone beyond aging. This is how the Buddha phrased it. Direct, simple. Sit with the fact, I will age. My body will change. The strength I have now will diminish. The face I see in the mirror today will not be the face I see in 10 years. You have already felt this. Perhaps you noticed it first in your hands, the way the skin looks different now than it did when you were young. Perhaps it was the knee that aches when it rains. Perhaps it was the morning you realized you could no longer read the small print on a medicine bottle without holding it at arm's length. Or the day you bent down to pick something up and the bending itself required a decision, a negotiation with the body that used to happen automatically. These moments are small. They arrive quietly, and most of the time, we dismiss them. We make a joke about getting old. We buy reading glasses. We take the pill and move on. But underneath the joke and the glasses and the pill, something is true. The body is moving in one direction, and nothing on earth can reverse it. Sitting with this truth is different from knowing it. Knowing it is what you do when you glance at a grey hair and think, I should dye that. Sitting with it is what happens when you look at that grey hair and stay, when you let the full weight of it arrive, when you let the thought complete itself. This body is aging. It will continue to age. Nothing I do will stop it. There is a specific feeling that comes when you sit with this truth instead of pushing it away. At first, it feels heavy, uncomfortable. Your mind will try to change the subject to the errands you need to run or the email you forgot to send. The avoidance is automatic. It has been running for so long that it feels like a part of you. But if you stay, if you sit with the fact of aging the way you might sit with a friend who is telling you something difficult, something softens. The heaviness begins to change shape. It stops being a threat and starts being simply true. The sky is blue. Water flows downhill. My body is aging. There is a strange relief in letting a truth be true. And here is something that people who have practiced this consistently will tell you. When you stop fighting the fact of aging, when you let it be as natural as the seasons changing, you begin to notice aging differently. You begin to notice it in the trees outside your window, in the way the wood darkens over years, in the way the bark thickens. You notice it in the sidewalk you walk on every day, the cracks that widen a little each year, the weeds that push through. You notice that everything around you is aging alongside you, that the whole world is in this together, and that there is a kind of companionship in that. You are not aging alone. The earth is aging with you. The second observation is about illness. I am subject to illness. I have not gone beyond illness. There will come a day when this body does not do what you ask it to do. A day when you will reach for something and your hand will tremble. A day when something inside you, some organ or system that has been working silently your entire life, will slow down or stop or break. You have already had a taste of this. Everyone has. A fever that lasted a week. A pain that arrived one morning and would not leave. A moment when you woke up and something in your body felt wrong, changed, in a way you could not quite explain. The body sent you a message, and the message was, I am not permanent. I am not reliable. I am not under your control. Most of us receive that message and immediately begin negotiating. We exercise. We eat differently. We go to the doctor. We take the medicine. And all of this is good. All of this is caring for the body. But underneath the caring, there is often an assumption. If I do enough, if I try hard enough, I can prevent this body from breaking down. The Buddha is asking you to see clearly that the body will break down regardless. That illness is not a failure of the body or a punishment. It is the nature of having a body at all. Every body that has ever existed has been subject to illness. Yours is not an exception. And there is a deeper layer to this observation that becomes visible only when you sit with it for a while. The fear of illness is often worse than illness itself. The anticipation, the dread, the constant scanning of the body for signs that something might be wrong, This mental suffering runs alongside the physical possibility of illness, like a shadow that is larger than the object casting it. When you sit with the truth that illness will come, when you let that fact settle without flinching, the shadow begins to shrink. The dread loosens. The body is still vulnerable, that has not changed. What has changed is the mind's relationship to that vulnerability. Sitting with this truth every morning does something unexpected. It makes you kinder to the body. When you stop expecting it to be invincible, when you accept that it is fragile and temporary and doing its best with the materials it has, something in your relationship to it changes. The frustration softens. The demand for perfection loosens. You begin to treat the body the way you would treat a guest in your home, with care and gratitude, knowing that the guest will eventually leave. The third observation is the one that most people find the hardest. I am subject to death. I have not gone beyond death. I will die. This is the center of the practice. Everything before it leads here. Everything after it flows from here. I will die. At a time I do not know, which could be today. The body I am sitting in right now will one day stop breathing. The heart that is beating in my chest will beat its last beat, and I will not know beforehand which beat that will be. Most people live as though this is not true. They plan for next year. They worry about retirement. They argue about things that will not matter in 5 years, let alone at the moment of their death. And they do all of this while carrying, somewhere beneath the surface, the knowledge that they could die today. The gap between what we know and how we live is the gap that the Buddha was pointing to. He was not being morbid. He was pointing to the most obvious fact in the world, a fact so obvious that we have built our entire civilization on top of it, hoping that if we pile enough activity and ambition and distraction on top, we will not have to feel it underneath. Sit with it. That is all the practice asks. Sit with the truth that you will die. Do not run from it. Do not argue with it. Do not try to figure out when or how. Just let it be true. The first time you do this, the mind will resist. You will feel a tightening in the chest, a flash of something cold in the stomach. The mind will try to escape. It will start composing a grocery list, or replaying a conversation from yesterday, or planning something that feels urgent but is not. This is the avoidance mechanism. It is very old. It has been protecting you from this particular truth since you were a child. Let it do what it does, and then gently bring the attention back. I will die. Stay with it for one breath, then another, then another. Over days and weeks, if you keep returning to this practice, the tightening begins to ease. The cold flash in the stomach becomes less sharp. The mind stops running so frantically, and in the space that opens up, in the quiet that remains when the resistance has softened, something unexpected arrives. The day gets brighter. The cup of tea you drink after your practice tastes different. The face of the person across from you at breakfast looks different. The light coming through the window, the light that comes through every morning, looks like something you are seeing for the first time. This is the paradox that sits at the heart of everything the Buddha taught about death. The more honestly you face it, the more alive you become. The more willing you are to sit with the truth that this body will not last, the more deeply you feel the miracle that it is here at all. The fourth observation may be the most tender. All that is dear to me, all that I love, will change and be separated from me. The people you love will die, or you will die first and leave them. Either way, the togetherness you have now is temporary. The child who sits in your lap today will grow up and walk away. The parents who raised you will age and weaken, and one day you will stand beside them the way Citta's family stood beside him, watching the breath slow, feeling the pauses grow longer. Think of a photograph from 10 years ago. Look at the people in it. Some of them are no longer in your life. Nothing dramatic happened. Time simply moved them in one direction and you in another. The friendship that felt permanent, the one you thought would last the rest of your life, it changed. Slowly, the way a river changes its course over years. You did not decide to lose that person. The conditions shifted, and the river moved. Or think of your own children, if you have them. The baby you held is gone. The toddler who clung to your leg is gone. The child who needed you for everything has become a person who needs you differently, or not at all. You did not lose them. They grew. But the version of them that you loved so fiercely at each stage, that version is no longer here. It was replaced, gently, by the next one. And the next one will be replaced too. Or think of your parents. Think of the version of your mother or father that exists in your earliest memory. The strong hand that lifted you, the voice that sounded like it could hold up the sky. That version is changing. The hand is softer now. The voice is quieter. Or perhaps it is already gone, and you carry it only in memory, replaying it late at night when the house is empty and you are the one whose hand has become the strong one, whose voice is the one that younger people lean on. The roles have shifted. The river has moved again. Your own body will one day be the body that your children watch with the same tenderness and the same helplessness that you feel watching your parents now. This is the cycle, and sitting with it does not make it easier. It makes it clearer, and clarity, even when it shows you something you would rather not see, is always better than the fog. Sitting with this, really sitting with it, does something remarkable to the way you love. When you stop pretending that the people in your life will be there forever, when you let yourself feel the weight of the fact that every conversation could be the last, something in the quality of your attention changes. You listen more carefully. You speak more gently. You forgive more easily. The argument that felt so important an hour ago loses its grip because you have sat with the truth that the person you are arguing with will one day not be here, and neither will you. This is what the Buddha meant when he gave this observation to his students. He was not asking them to grieve in advance. He was giving them the practice of attention. When you know that everything you love is temporary, you pay attention to it. You hold it carefully. You treat it as the extraordinary thing it actually is, a moment of warmth in a vast and changing world. The fifth observation is the one that changes everything. I am the owner of my actions. I am the heir of my actions. My actions are the ground on which I stand. The first 4 observations strip away illusion. The illusion that the body will last. The illusion that health is permanent. The illusion that death is far away. The illusion that the people and things you love will always be with you. By the time you reach the 5th observation, everything you thought was solid has been shown to be moving. And the question that remains is, if everything changes, if the body ages and sickens and dies, if everyone I love will eventually be separated from me, then what is left? What endures? What do I actually carry with me through this life and beyond it? The Buddha's answer is precise: your actions. What you do with your body, with your speech, with your mind, these are the only things that belong to you. Everything else is borrowed. The body is borrowed. The health is borrowed. The relationships are borrowed. The house and the career and the reputation, all of it is on loan, and the loan will be called in. The only thing that is truly yours, the only inheritance you leave, and the only inheritance you take, is the quality of your actions. This word, kamma, which most people know as karma, is one of the most misunderstood ideas in the world. Karma does not mean fate. It does not mean that the universe is keeping score. It does not mean that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. The Buddha's teaching on this point is much simpler and more honest than that. Karma means that what you do matters. When you speak kindly, something shifts. In you, in the person you spoke to, in the space between you. When you act with generosity, something opens. When you respond to difficulty with patience instead of anger, something in the mind becomes a little clearer, a little more spacious, a little more free. And the reverse is also true. When you harm, something contracts. When you lie, something clouds. When you act from greed or hatred, something in the quality of your own mind becomes heavier, more narrow. These effects are as practical as breathing. You have felt them. You know what your mind feels like after you have been kind, and you know what it feels like after you have been cruel. The difference is as clear as the difference between a room with the windows open and a room with the windows shut. The Buddha placed this observation last because it is the resolution of the 4 that come before it. If everything changes, if the body breaks and the loved ones leave, and even the life itself will end, then the only meaningful question is, what am I doing with the time I have? Am I using this temporary body to create kindness or to create harm? Am I planting seeds of clarity or seeds of confusion? These are the questions that arise naturally when you sit with the 5 observations every morning. They are not imposed from outside. They are the natural response of an honest mind to an honest look at the way things are. And the answers do not need to be dramatic. The seeds of wholesome karma, kusala kamma, as the Buddha called it, are planted in ordinary moments. In the patience you show your children when they ask the same question for the 5th time. In the way you speak to the person who serves your coffee in the morning. In the decision to listen when someone is talking. Really listen, instead of waiting for your turn to speak. In the small act of kindness that no one will see and no one will thank you for. These moments accumulate. They build the quality of the mind the way drops of water fill a vessel, one at a time, so slowly that you cannot see the level rising. But one day you look and the vessel is full, and the mind that has been filled with kindness and patience and honesty, that mind carries a different weight than the mind that has been filled with hurry and resentment and the habit of looking away. Citta understood this. That is why, on his deathbed, when the Devata offered him the most powerful worldly rebirth, he said no. He had spent his life pointing his mind toward freedom, and accepting the offer would have been pointing it backward, toward another round of grasping, another cycle of gaining and losing, another temporary home that would eventually fall. There is a reason the Buddha asked his students to practice these observations every day, and not just once or twice when the mood struck them. He knew that human beings carry 5 intoxications, 5 subtle beliefs that run so deep they feel like common sense. The intoxication with youth, the belief that aging is something that happens to other people. The intoxication with health, the belief that this body will always function. The intoxication with life itself, the belief that death is far away. The intoxication with loved ones, the belief that the people around you will always be there. And the intoxication with privilege, the belief that consequences are for other people. These 5 intoxications make people careless. They make people waste time. They make people treat each other badly because they assume there will always be another chance. The 5 observations are the antidote to these 5 intoxications. One set undoes the other, and they need to be practiced daily because the intoxications rebuild every day. The reason is that the mind forgets. This is not a flaw. It is how the mind works. You can sit with the truth of impermanence in the morning, feel it fully, let it settle into your bones, and by noon the old assumptions are back. You are planning for next year again. You are worrying about something that will not matter. You are arguing with someone about something that both of you will forget. The assumptions rebuild themselves every day. The belief that the body will last, it comes back. The belief that death is far away, it comes back. The mind reconstructs the illusion of permanence automatically, the way a river fills in the space left by a stone that has been removed. The water moves back, the surface smooths, and before you know it, the landscape looks exactly the way it did before you ever sat down to look at it. This is why the practice is daily. Every morning, you remove the stone again. You create the opening again. You let the truth flow through again. And over time, over months and years, the opening stays a little longer. The water takes a little longer to fill in. The assumptions rebuild a little more slowly. And one day, after enough mornings, the opening does not close at all. Think about what happens when you exercise regularly. The first few days, the body protests. It is sore. It is tired. It does not want to do this. But after a week, 2 weeks, a month, the body begins to change. The effort becomes easier. The muscles adapt. Something that felt impossible at the beginning becomes the new normal. The 5 observations work the same way, on the mind instead of the body. The first few times you sit with, "I will die," the mind protests. It generates anxiety. It wants to change the subject. It floods you with plans for the future, as if by planning far enough ahead, death can be postponed. This is normal. It is the mind doing what it has always done. But if you continue, if you sit with the truth every morning, the way you would continue to exercise despite the soreness, something shifts. The anxiety diminishes. The running slows. And what emerges in its place is a calm, quiet, wide-awake presence that transforms the way you move through every single hour of your day. The old texts have a word for this quality. They call it appamada, which means something close to urgency without panic, diligence without anxiety. It is the quality of attention that belongs to someone who knows that time is real and limited and precious. The calm of someone who sees clearly. This quality is what the Buddha called the foundation of all good things, and it arises naturally from sitting with the 5 observations. You do not need to manufacture it. You simply sit with what is true every morning, and the attention comes on its own. And the attention changes how you live. The conversation with your friend becomes more than background noise. It becomes the sound of a voice that you will not hear forever. And because you know this, you listen differently. You notice the way she laughs, the way he pauses before saying something important, the way the silence between sentences feels like a room you are both standing in together. Even the difficult moments change texture. The traffic jam stops being an obstacle and becomes a few minutes of unexpected stillness. The boring meeting becomes an exercise in watching your own mind. The pain in your knee becomes the body's honest report about its current condition, information to receive with care rather than frustration. People who practice the 5 observations for a long time often say the same thing. They say they expected sadness and found freedom. They expected heaviness and found lightness. They expected the practice to make them think about death all day, and instead it made them notice life. The way rain sounds on the roof at night, the weight of a warm cup in the hands, the specific blue of the sky on this particular afternoon, which will never look exactly this way again. This is what Citta practiced for decades, and this is why, on the night he died, the fear was absent. He had faced these truths so many times that they were no longer threats. They were simply the ground he stood on. Familiar, solid, his own. But there is a question that the 5 observations open and do not answer. Modern medicine can explain with great precision how the body stops. The heart ceases. The blood stops flowing. The brain loses oxygen. The cells begin to die. Every physical process that made the person alive can be tracked as it slows and stops. From a medical perspective, the body's ending is biology, chemistry, physics. There is no mystery in it. And yet, anyone who has sat with a dying person truly sat with them through the long, slow hours of the final breath, knows that the medical explanation does not cover everything. There is a gap between what science describes and what you experience in that room. Something was there, and then it was not. The body did not change in appearance immediately. The room changed. The quality of the air changed. The sense of someone being present, looking out from behind those eyes, that sense vanished. And what remained was a body that looked the same but felt fundamentally different. Something leaves. Where does it go? This question, this simple, honest question, is the same question that the Buddha answered 2,500 years ago. And his answer was different from what most people expect. He did not say that an eternal self flies away to a heavenly realm. He did not say that a fixed, unchanging identity survives the body and moves on to the next life, the way a person moves from one house to another. And he did not say that nothing continues, that death is the absolute end of everything. He said something far more precise. And understanding it clearly, understanding what actually continues and what does not, changes everything about how you relate to death, to life, and to the practice of sitting with these 5 observations every morning. What happens when you die? This is the question that sits underneath all the others, underneath the fear of aging, underneath the dread of illness, underneath the grief you feel when someone you love is gone. All of these fears, when you follow them down far enough, lead to the same place. What happens when the last breath leaves the body? Where do I go? Do I go anywhere? Or is this it? Every human culture that has ever existed has tried to answer this question. Some say you go to heaven if you have been good, and to hell if you have been bad. Some say you are reborn as another person or another creature. Some say you merge with a cosmic energy. Some say there is nothing, that consciousness is a byproduct of the brain, and when the brain stops, consciousness stops with it, the way a lamp goes dark when the electricity is cut. And most of us, if we are honest, carry some version of one of these beliefs. We carry it without examining it. We carry it the way we carry an old key in a drawer. We know it is there. We are not sure what it opens, and we have never tried to use it. We do not examine our belief about death because examining it would mean facing death. And facing death is the one thing the avoidance mechanism is designed to prevent. So, the belief sits there, unexamined, shaping everything. It shapes the way you feel when you hear that someone your age has died. It shapes the way you respond when the doctor's face changes expression. It shapes the way you hold your child, the tightness of the grip, the fear underneath the love. An unexamined belief about death is like a foundation you have never inspected. The entire house rests on it, and you have no idea whether it is solid or cracked or already crumbling. The Buddha's answer to this question was different from all of these. And to understand it, we need to look at what happened when one of his own monks got it wrong. There was a monk in the Buddha's community whose name was Sati. He was a fisherman's son, which is worth mentioning because it tells you something about the kind of person he was. He came from a practical family, a family that worked with their hands, a family that dealt with concrete things, boats and nets and water and fish. He was not a philosopher by background. He was not someone who grew up debating metaphysics. He was a working man's son who had been drawn to the Buddha's teachings and had left his old life to become a monk. And somewhere along the way, through his years of listening to the teachings and practicing meditation, Sati had arrived at a conclusion. He believed he understood what the Buddha was teaching about consciousness and rebirth, and he began telling the other monks what he believed. He said, "As I understand the Buddha's teaching, it is this same consciousness that runs through the cycle of rebirth. This consciousness, the one that thinks and feels and experiences, this is what continues from life to life. It does not change. It is the same one. It moves from body to body the way a traveler moves from town to town. The towns change, but the traveler remains the same." This is probably what most of us believe. If we believe anything about what comes after death, there is something inside us, some core of awareness, some essential version of who we are, and when the body dies, that essential thing moves on. It finds another body, or it goes to another realm, or it continues in some form. The details vary, but the basic shape of the belief is the same. There is a me, a fixed, continuous, unchanging me that survives the death of the body. This belief is so deep that most people do not even recognize it as a belief. It feels like common sense. It feels like something everyone knows, the way everyone knows that the sun rises in the east. Of course, there is a me inside this body. Of course, that me is the same one that was here yesterday and will be here tomorrow. Of course, it will continue when the body dies. What else could possibly be the case? Sati believed this, and he believed the Buddha taught it. The other monks heard what Sati was saying, and they tried to correct him. They said, "Brother, the Buddha does not teach this. The Buddha teaches that consciousness arises from conditions. It is not a fixed thing that travels. You have misunderstood." Sati would not listen. He held his position. He was certain he was right. And when the other monks could not convince him, they went to the Buddha himself. What happened next is one of the sharpest moments in all of the Buddha's recorded teachings. The Buddha called Sati before the full assembly of monks. This was not a private conversation. This was a public correction in front of every monk in the community. Hundreds of men sitting in rows, silent, watching. The fact that the Buddha chose to address this publicly tells you how serious he considered this misunderstanding to be. Of all the things a student could get wrong about the teachings, this was one the Buddha would not let pass quietly. It had to be corrected in the open, where everyone could hear, because this mistake was not just Sati's. It was the mistake that almost every human being makes. And if it was left uncorrected, it would spread. He looked at Sati and asked, "Is it true that you hold this view, that this same consciousness runs and wanders through the cycle of rebirth?" Sati said, "Yes, that is exactly what I understand." The Buddha asked, "What is this consciousness, as you understand it?" And Sati said, "It is that which speaks and feels and experiences, here and there, the results of good and bad actions." The Buddha's response was immediate and unsparing. He said, "Misguided man, to whom have you ever heard me teach the Dhamma in that way? Have I not said in many ways that consciousness arises dependent on conditions? Without a condition, there is no arising of consciousness." This is one of the very few places in the entire canon where the Buddha used such strong language with a monk. Misguided man. He did not say this because Sati was stupid or because the question was unimportant. He said it because Sati's misunderstanding was the most common and the most dangerous mistake a person could make on this path. It is the mistake that keeps us stuck. It is the mistake that feeds our fear. And it is the mistake that almost every human being carries without knowing it. And then the Buddha explained. He used a metaphor that has stayed in the teachings for 2,500 years because of how precisely it captures what he meant. He talked about fire. A fire that burns wood, he said, is called a wood fire. A fire that burns straw is called a straw fire. A fire that burns grass is called a grass fire. A fire that burns dried cow dung is called a dung fire. The fire is named by the fuel it burns. When the fuel changes, the fire changes. When you move the flame from wood to straw, the quality of the fire changes. The color changes. The heat changes. The speed of the burning changes. The smell changes. Is it the same fire? This is the question the Buddha was asking. And the answer is, the question itself is wrong. It is not the same fire because the conditions have changed. And it is not a completely different fire because the burning continued from one fuel to the next. The flame that was in the wood did not jump across empty space and land in the straw. The wood fire lit the straw, and the straw caught, and a new fire arose from that contact, connected to the first, caused by the first, but not identical to the first. This, the Buddha said, is how consciousness works. Consciousness is not a thing. It is not an object that sits inside you like a gem inside a box. It is not a traveler that moves from body to body the way Sati imagined. Consciousness is a process, an event, something that arises when certain conditions come together and ceases when those conditions change. The Buddha went further. He gave specific examples, so precise that even Sati could not misunderstand. When the eye meets a visible form, visual consciousness arises. You see something. That seeing is not a permanent faculty that was waiting inside you. It arose because two things came together, the eye and the form. Remove either one, and the seeing does not happen. When the ear meets a sound, auditory consciousness arises. You hear something. That hearing was not sitting in your ear waiting to be activated. It arose from the meeting of ear and sound. In a room with no sound, there is no hearing. The consciousness of hearing does not exist independently, floating somewhere inside your head, waiting for a sound to arrive. It comes into being only when the conditions for it come into being. When the mind meets a thought, mental consciousness arises. The thought and the awareness of the thought arise together, dependent on each other, the way the flame and the fuel exist together. No fuel, no flame. No conditions, no consciousness. In each case, The consciousness is named by the conditions that produced it, the same way the fire is named by the fuel it burns. There is no single, fixed, unchanging consciousness running through all of it. There is a process, arising and ceasing, moment after moment, shaped by what it meets. Now, let this settle for a moment, because this teaching changes everything about how we think about death. If you believe, as Sati did, that there is a fixed consciousness inside you that will survive the death of the body, then death is the moment when that consciousness packs its bags and moves to a new house. You, the essential you, continue. Your personality continues. Your sense of being you continues. Death is frightening in this view because the move is difficult, and you do not know where you will end up. At least you survive it. This view gives comfort, but it also gives you something to cling to. And the clinging, the grip on this idea of a permanent me, is itself a source of suffering, because the more tightly you hold the idea that you are a fixed thing, the more terrified you become of anything that threatens to change it. Aging threatens it. Illness threatens it. Failure threatens it. Every loss feels like a piece of you being taken away. If you believe the opposite, that consciousness is produced by the brain and dies when the brain dies, then death is the end of everything. The lamp goes out. The darkness is total. You, the one who thinks and feels and loves, are gone. Completely. Forever. Death in this view is terrifying because it is annihilation. And this terror does not sit quietly in the background. It leaks into everything. It makes you rush. It makes you accumulate. It makes you treat life like a timer counting down. And every moment that is not filled with something feels like a waste. The pressure to make every day count becomes its own form of suffering, because no day can ever count enough to erase the fact that all the days will end. The Buddha said both of these views are wrong. The first view, that a fixed self continues, is wrong because there is no fixed self to continue. The consciousness you have right now is not the same consciousness you had 10 years ago. It has been shaped by different conditions, different experiences, different relationships, different choices. You are not the same fire. The fuel has changed, and you have changed with it. The second view, that nothing continues, is wrong because the process does not stop at death. The fire in the wood does not simply vanish when the wood is consumed. If there is straw nearby, the fire catches. Something continues. Something is transmitted. The flame moves. The burning does not end. It changes form. And the thing that determines what form it takes, the thing that shapes the next fire, is karma, your actions, the quality of everything you have done and said and thought and intended. This is the fuel, and the quality of the fuel determines the quality of the next flame. This is the Buddha's answer to the question of what happens after death, and it is worth sitting with because it is unlike anything most of us have ever heard. There is no fixed you that flies away to another life. The personality you have now, the memories, the habits, the voice you hear inside your head, these are products of this particular body and this particular life. They will not transfer to the next existence the way files transfer from one computer to another. The you that you know yourself to be is specific to these conditions, and when these conditions end, this particular you ends with them. And yet, something does continue. The stream of conditioned experience does not stop. The momentum of your actions, the accumulated weight of how you have lived, the direction you have been pointing your mind, this carries forward, like the fire that lights the straw, connected to what came before, shaped by what came before, but different, new, arising fresh from the conditions it has been given. If this sounds difficult to understand, that is because it is. The Buddha himself acknowledged that this teaching is subtle. It goes against the grain of everything we instinctively believe about ourselves. We feel like a fixed self. When you close your eyes and look inward, there seems to be someone there, a center, a witness, an I that has been present through every experience of your life, watching, remembering, holding it all together. You can test this right now. Think of a memory from your childhood, a specific moment, a specific day. You remember being there. You remember seeing what you saw and feeling what you felt. And the one who remembers, that feels like the same you who is sitting here now, listening to these words. The body has changed completely. The thoughts have changed. The circumstances have changed. But the one who watches, the witness, that seems to have been the same all along. The Buddha's teaching does not deny this experience. He is not saying that you do not feel like a continuous self. He is saying that the feeling is a construction. It is produced by conditions, the same way the sense of a single river is produced by water flowing continuously through a channel. The river looks like one thing. It has a name. You can point to it and say, there it is. That is the Ganges. That is the Mekong. But the water in the river right now is not the water that was there an hour ago. And the water that will be there tomorrow has not arrived yet. The river is a process, not a thing. And so are you. Why does this matter? It matters because the way you understand what continues after death determines how you live right now. If you believe a fixed self continues, you spend your life protecting that self, building it up, defending it against insult and injury, acquiring things for it, making it comfortable, and fearing deeply that it could be harmed or diminished or destroyed. This is the life that most of us live. A life organized around the protection of something that, when you look closely, is a process pretending to be a thing. If you believe nothing continues, you spend your life grasping, getting as much as you can before the darkness comes. Pleasure now, experiences now, recognition now, because there is nothing on the other side, and the clock is running, and every moment that passes without satisfaction is a moment wasted. This is the other life that many of us live. A life organized around urgency and acquisition, fueled by the belief that this is all there is. The Buddha's teaching offers a third way of living, and it is the way that Citta lived. When you understand that there is no fixed self to protect, the energy you have been spending on self-protection becomes available for something else. Think about how much of your mental life is devoted to defending the image of who you are, the stories you tell about yourself, the reputation you maintain, the fear of being seen as weak or wrong or insufficient. All of this is labor, constant, exhausting labor, in service of an entity that the Buddha says is a construction. When the construction is seen clearly for what it is, the labor can stop, and the energy that was bound up in self-defense can flow into something more useful, into kindness, into attention, into the quiet work of tending the quality of your actions. And when you understand that something does continue, that the stream does not end at death, the nihilistic urgency also drops away. You do not need to grab everything you can before the lights go out. You do not need to treat this life as a race against darkness. The stream continues, and the quality of the stream, right now, in this moment, is the only thing that shapes what comes next. If what continues is the quality of your actions, if the fuel you burn in this life determines the fire that arises next, then the most important thing you can do is tend the quality of the burning. Every act of kindness is clean fuel. Every act of generosity is clean fuel. Every moment of patience, of honesty, of attention, of care is clean fuel. And the fire that arises from clean fuel burns differently from the fire that arises from dirty fuel. It is brighter, warmer, clearer. It gives light instead of smoke. This is why the fifth observation, I am the owner of my actions, is the resolution of everything the Buddha taught about death. Because if the fixed self is an illusion, and if annihilation is also wrong, then the only thing that matters is what you do, how you speak, how you think, how you treat the person next to you, how you respond when things go wrong, how you hold the people you love, how you carry the pain you cannot avoid. These actions are the inheritance. They are what the fire carries from one fuel to the next, and they are entirely in your hands. Sati, standing before the assembly, heard all of this. The texts say he sat down in silence, humbled, unable to respond. He had believed that the thing inside him, the consciousness that spoke and felt and experienced, was a permanent passenger that would step off one train and onto another. The Buddha showed him that there is no passenger. There is only the movement, and the movement is shaped by everything you do while you are moving. The monks in the assembly sat with this. Hundreds of them. Some had held the same belief as Sati. Some had suspected it was wrong without knowing what the correct understanding was. And now they were hearing, in the Buddha's own words, in front of the entire community, the precise teaching on what consciousness is and what it is not. The teaching did not just correct Sati. It corrected the default assumption of every human mind. And the Buddha continued teaching for a long time after that, explaining in detail how consciousness arises dependent on conditions, how the entire chain of experience, from contact to feeling to craving to grasping, unfolds without a permanent self directing it. The teaching that day was one of the longest and most detailed in the entire canon. The Buddha wanted to leave no room for ambiguity. This was too important to be vague about. This teaching can sound frightening at first. If there is no fixed self, then what is the point? If the me I know will not survive death, then why does anything matter? But look again. Look the way the Buddha was asking you to look. If the me you are protecting is a process and not a thing, then there is nothing to protect. And if there is nothing to protect, there is nothing to fear. The entire structure of fear is built on the belief that you are something solid that can be destroyed. When you see that you are a river, that you have always been a river, that the water has been changing since the day you were born, then the idea of the river ending stops being terrifying. Because you have been ending and beginning in every single moment of your life. You have been dying and being born with every breath. Death is not a single catastrophic event at the end of the story. It is something that has been happening all along. And what remains, what carries through every death and every birth, is the direction of the water, the quality of the flow, the kindness you put into it, the clarity you cultivated, the patience you practiced when the current was rough. This is what Citta knew. He did not believe he was a fixed self that would survive death, and he did not believe that death was the end. He understood, through decades of practice and observation, that the stream would continue, and that the quality of his life's work would shape where the stream went next. That is why he said no to the Devatar. That is why he spent his last moments teaching instead of grasping. He was tending the quality of the fuel all the way to the final breath. And this teaching changes something else too, something that matters for the living as much as for the dying. It changes the way you grieve. When someone you love dies, and you understand the Buddha's teaching, the grief does not disappear. The loss is real. The absence is real. The empty chair at the table is real. But underneath the grief, there is something other than despair. Because you know that the person you loved was not a fixed thing that was destroyed. They were a process, a fire, a river, and the process has not ended. It has changed form. The fuel is different now. The river has found a new channel. And the kindness they carried, the love they cultivated, the quality of how they lived. These are the conditions that shape whatever comes next for them. This does not erase the pain of missing them. The Buddha never promised that understanding would remove suffering. He promised that understanding would remove the confusion underneath the suffering, the confused belief that something solid has been permanently destroyed. When that confusion is lifted, the grief becomes clean, sharp, honest, without the added weight of existential terror. You miss the person, you honor what they built, and you trust the stream. There is one more thing worth saying about the fire metaphor, because it holds a truth that is easy to miss. The fire does not worry about what kind of fire it will be next. The wood fire does not lie awake at night, wondering whether the straw fire will be happy. The fire simply burns, as cleanly as the fuel allows, and when the conditions change, it changes with them. There is a deep rest in this understanding, the kind of rest that comes when you stop carrying a question that was never yours to answer. You do not need to solve the mystery of what lies on the other side of death. You do not need to map the territory you have never visited. You do not need to know whether the next fire will burn in a forest or a kitchen or a lamp beside a sleeping child. That is not your work. Your work is here, in this fuel, in this moment, in the quality of this particular burning. This is the freedom the Buddha was pointing to. You do not need to know what happens next. You do not need to see the next life or understand exactly how the transition works. You do not need to have faith in a cosmic system or believe in invisible realms. You simply need to tend the fire, to burn as cleanly as you can, to choose kindness when cruelty is easier, to choose honesty when deception is more comfortable, to choose patience when anger feels more satisfying. And when the time comes for the fuel to change, the fire will take care of itself. If the question of death has ever kept you awake at night, if you have ever lain in the dark wondering what happens when the body stops, then this teaching from the Buddha offers something different from both comfort and despair. It offers clarity. It says, you are asking the wrong question. The question is not what happens to me after I die. The question is, what am I doing right now, with this breath, in this body, at this moment, that will shape what comes next. And that question, unlike the question of what happens after death, is one you can answer every day, with every choice, with every word and every action and every intention you plant in the soil of this one life. This is where the 5 observations from the previous section become more than philosophy. They become the daily mechanism by which you tend the fire. Each morning, when you sit with the truth that you will age, that you will get sick, that you will die, that everything you love will change, that your actions are all you carry, you are reminding yourself what kind of fuel to choose. You are recalibrating the direction of the stream. You are tending the fire. The Buddha did not leave this as theory. He gave a very specific practice, a way of holding the awareness of death so close that it transforms how you live every single day. He told his monks exactly how deeply they needed to practice it, and what he said surprised even them. The grove was quiet that afternoon. The monks had finished their meal and gathered in the shade the way they did when the Buddha called an assembly, sitting in rows on the packed earth, robes folded over their left shoulders, hands resting in their laps. Some of them had been practicing for decades. Some were younger, still learning to sit without fidgeting, still learning to hold their attention through a long teaching. But all of them had given up their former lives to be here. All of them had left something behind: a family, a trade, a house, a name that used to mean something in the world outside this grove. The Buddha looked at them, and he asked a question that none of them were prepared for. He said, "How do you practice mindfulness of death?" Not whether they practiced it. He assumed they did. The question was how. How deeply? How closely? How far inside the breath did the awareness reach? The monks looked at each other, and then, one by one, they answered. The first monk spoke. He said, "Venerable Sir, I contemplate that I might live for a day and a night. I attend to the Buddha's teaching for that long. I would feel I had done much. Think about what this monk is saying. He is saying that every single day, he sits with the awareness that he may have only 24 hours left. One day. That is his practice. He wakes up in the morning and he holds the thought, I may not see tomorrow. And then he lives his day from that awareness. By most standards, this is an extraordinary level of practice. Most of us cannot hold the awareness of death for 24 seconds, let alone 24 hours. If someone you knew told you they lived every day as though it might be their last, you would probably consider them unusually wise, unusually present, unusually alive. The next monk spoke. He said, I contemplate that I might live for a day, just the daylight hours. I attend to the Buddha's teaching for that long. Another monk said, I contemplate that I might live for half a day. Each answer was shorter than the last. Each monk was narrowing the window, and each one believed he was being more diligent than the one before. A day and a night. A day. Half a day. The window was closing. The distance between now and the possible moment of death was shrinking with each answer, and the monks were showing the Buddha and each other how tightly they held the awareness of death, how close they kept it, how little time they allowed themselves to assume. Imagine what it would mean to live at each of these levels. The monk who holds death within a day wakes up in the morning and thinks, I have this day. Maybe. He treats the day with a certain weight, a certain seriousness, that most people reserve for special occasions. The monk who holds death within half a day reaches noon and feels the practice sharpen. The afternoon is not guaranteed. The monk who holds death within a meal sits down with his bowl and knows that this food in front of him may be the last thing he tastes. Each level is more intimate. Each level brings death closer to the body. And at each level, the things that do not matter fall away a little more. Then the answers shifted from hours to minutes. Another monk spoke. He said, I contemplate that I might live for the time it takes to eat a meal. This is a different order of magnitude. A meal takes perhaps half an hour. This monk is holding death within 30 minutes. 30 minutes. The length of a podcast episode. The time it takes to commute to work. The time you spend scrolling through your phone before bed. He is saying, I might not survive the length of a meal. And then the window narrowed further. Another monk said, I contemplate that I might live for the time it takes to chew and swallow 4 or 5 mouthfuls of food. 4 or 5 mouthfuls. That is perhaps a minute, maybe 2. The monk is holding death within the span of a few chewing motions. And another, I contemplate that I might live for the time it takes to chew and swallow a single mouthful. And the last monk said, I contemplate that I might die between one breath and the next. Breathing in, I might not breathe out. Breathing out, I might not breathe in. The room was quiet. The monks waited for the Buddha's response. They had offered their practice, ranging from a full day to a single breath, and they waited to hear which level of practice the Buddha considered sufficient. The Buddha's answer changed everything. He said, The monk who contemplates that he might live for a day and a night, that monk is dwelling in heedlessness. Heedlessness. The word landed in that room like a stone dropped into still water, because heedlessness, in the Buddha's vocabulary, was not a mild word. It was the opposite of everything the path was about. The Buddha had said on other occasions that heedlessness is the root of all unwholesome states, that a heedless person is already as good as dead. And here he was using that word to describe a monk who holds the awareness of death for an entire day. The monk who wakes up every morning and genuinely holds the thought that he may not see tomorrow. The monk whose entire day is lived under the awareness that death could come at any moment within those 24 hours. The Buddha called that monk heedless, careless, not practicing deeply enough. He continued, the monk who contemplates living for a day, heedless. Half a day, heedless. The monk sitting in that assembly must have felt a chill. If a full day of death awareness is heedlessness, then what is diligence? How close to death does the mind have to hold before the Buddha considers it awake? The monks who contemplate living for the time it takes to eat a meal, or to chew and swallow a few mouthfuls, the Buddha said these monks are dwelling with more diligence. They are closer. They are holding the awareness more tightly. The gap between knowing and living is narrower for them. But the monk who contemplates death between one breath and the next, the monk who breathes in without knowing if he will breathe out, that monk, the Buddha said, is dwelling in the fullness of diligence. That monk is practicing maranasati, mindfulness of death, the way it is meant to be practiced. Let this land for a moment. The Buddha is saying that contemplating death once a day is too distant, too abstract, too much room for the mind to build its familiar shelters. Even holding the awareness for half a day gives the mind enough space to start planning, to start assuming, to start reconstructing the illusion of permanence that the 5 observations are designed to dissolve. The only practice the Buddha considered truly diligent was the practice of holding death within the space of a single breath. Why? Because one breath is the smallest unit of time the mind cannot negotiate with. Think about how the mind works when you give it time. When you tell the mind, I might die today, the mind immediately begins to calculate. It says, probably not. I feel fine. Nothing is wrong with my body. I am not old. I am not sick. The chances are extremely small. A day is long enough for the mind to find an escape route. It can make plans. It can review the to-do list. It can start organizing tomorrow, which is already an act of assuming that tomorrow will come. Within minutes, the awareness of death has been filed away, and the mind is back to its default mode, which is assuming permanence. This is what the Buddha meant by heedlessness. Even a monk who holds the awareness of death for a full day is giving his mind enough room to rebuild the illusion. One day is long enough for the mind to say, I will be more present tomorrow. And that single thought, I will be more present tomorrow, is already heedlessness, because it assumes there will be a tomorrow. When you tell the mind, I might die between this breath and the next, there is no room. The mind has nowhere to go. There is no to-do list small enough to fit between an inhale and an exhale. There is no plan that can be made in the time it takes air to leave the lungs. There is no tomorrow to postpone things to, no evening to save the important things for, no next week to push the hard conversation into. The mind, for once, has no option except to be here, fully here, in this body, in this breath, with nothing else. This is not anxiety. This is the opposite of anxiety. Anxiety is the mind racing into the future, imagining dangers that have not arrived, rehearsing catastrophes that may never happen. Anxiety fills the present moment with the shadows of what might come. A person who is anxious about death is a person whose mind is constantly leaping forward to the moment of dying, imagining the hospital, imagining the pain, imagining the faces of loved ones, and then snapping back to the present with a jolt of fear. The mind is in two places at once, and the body carries the tension of that split. Maranasati is the opposite of this. Maranasati does not project forward. It draws the awareness of death backward into the present moment, into this breath, into the body as it is right now. There is no imagining. There is no rehearsal. There is only the simple recognition. This breath is happening. The next one is uncertain. And in that recognition, in the gap between the certainty of this breath and the uncertainty of the next, something opens. Maranasati empties the present moment of everything except what is actually here. This breath, this heartbeat, this awareness, the sound of the air entering and leaving, the feeling of the body resting against whatever surface is holding it, the aliveness that you can feel if you stop long enough to notice it. There is a tremendous peace in this, a peace that surprises people when they first experience it, because you would expect that holding death this close would be terrifying. You would expect it to feel like standing on the edge of a cliff, heart pounding, stomach dropping, every muscle tense. And maybe, the first time you try it, that is what it feels like. The body tenses. The mind contracts. Something in the chest pulls tight and says, "No, I do not want to look at this." This is the same resistance that arose the first time you sat with the 5 observations. The mind protecting itself from truth. It is natural. It is old. It has been doing this your entire life. But if you stay with it, if you breathe in and genuinely hold the possibility that this breath could be the last, and then breathe out and do the same, and then again and again, the resistance begins to tire. It cannot maintain itself indefinitely. The mind discovers that the thing it was so afraid to look at, when looked at directly, does not destroy it. The cliff disappears. There is no edge. There is only the ground, the solid, warm, present ground of this moment. And you are standing on it, and it is enough. This is what the Buddha meant by appamada, the quality we talked about earlier: diligence, urgency without panic, the calm attention of someone who is fully awake. It is not produced by thinking about death. It is produced by being present with the reality of death as a fact that lives inside your breathing, present in every inhale and every exhale. And when you carry this awareness into your day, the day changes. You can feel this right now if you want to try. Wherever you are, whatever position your body is in, just notice the breath. Feel the air entering. Feel the lungs fill. And then, as the air leaves, hold this one thought gently. I do not know if the next breath will come. Do not force anything. Do not try to feel a certain way. Just breathe in and notice the breath, and breathe out and notice the uncertainty. Let the uncertainty sit there, like a guest you were not expecting, who arrived quietly and is sitting in the corner of the room, not demanding anything, just present. And then, if the next breath comes, notice how it feels. Notice whether the air tastes different. Notice whether the body feels different. Notice whether the room you are in, the sounds around you, the temperature of the air on your skin, notice whether any of this feels more present than it did a moment ago. If it does, even a little, you have just felt what the monks felt. The teaching is already in your body. The rest is repetition, morning after morning, breath after breath, until the presence becomes your natural way of moving through the world. Now think about what this does to an ordinary morning. You are standing in the kitchen making breakfast. The kettle is boiling. The bread is in the toaster. Your child is asking you something and you are half listening because your mind is already at the office, already running through the first meeting, already composing the email you forgot to send last night. This is how most mornings go. The body is in the kitchen. The mind is somewhere else. The body is pouring milk into a bowl. The mind is 3 hours ahead, worrying about something that has not happened yet. The body is standing next to a child who wants attention. The mind is standing in a conference room that does not exist yet. Now imagine that same morning, with the awareness of Maranasati humming quietly underneath. You are standing in the kitchen. The kettle is boiling. Your child is asking you something. And somewhere in you, as a felt sense more than a thought, there is the awareness that this moment is real in a way that the meeting at the office is not. The meeting may or may not happen. This breath is happening. This voice is speaking. This small person is looking up at you with a question in their eyes. And you turn to them. And you listen. And the email can wait. Because the email is a plan for a future that may not arrive, and the child is here, now, in the only moment that actually exists. This is what Maranasati does. It does not add anything to your life. It strips away everything that is not real. And what is left, when the planning and the worrying and the assuming have been set down, is the life that was always there, vivid, warm, present, waiting for you to notice it. The Buddha was not asking his monks to live in fear. He was asking them to live without the cushion of assumptions that most of us wrap around ourselves every morning. The assumption that I will be here tomorrow. The assumption that there is time. The assumption that the important things can wait because there will always be another chance. The assumption that the body I woke up in today will carry me through another year, another decade, another season. Aging and illness and death and decay, these are already moving toward you. The Buddha once described them as 4 mountains, one from each direction, rolling toward you, crushing everything in their path. You cannot outrun them. You cannot negotiate with them. You cannot buy your way out. The only question that matters when the mountains are coming is how will you use the ground you are still standing on? The assumptions we carry are comfortable. They allow us to postpone the difficult conversation. They allow us to put off the apology we owe. They allow us to keep doing work we hate because we believe there will be time later to do what we love. They allow us to live a smaller life than the one we are capable of, because the small life feels safe, and we think we have time to grow into the larger one. Maranasati removes the cushion. When you hold death within the space of a single breath, the difficult conversation becomes easy. The apology you have been avoiding becomes obvious. The work you hate becomes intolerable, because you can see clearly that spending your remaining breaths on something that does not matter is a kind of slow self-betrayal. And the life you have been postponing, the one where you are honest and present and kind and brave, that life becomes the only option, because there is no later. There is only this breath, and then the next one, if it comes. People who practice Maranasati consistently report a strange side effect. They become less interested in the things they used to fight about. The office politics that consumed their energy, the competitive edge they felt they needed to maintain, the resentment they carried towards someone who wronged them years ago, these things begin to feel like heavy clothes that no longer fit. When you are holding death within a single breath, the question is always the same. Is this worth my breath? Is this grudge worth a breath? Is this argument worth a breath? Is this worry about what someone thinks of me worth the breath I am using to carry it? Most of the time, the answer is no. And in that no, there is an enormous freedom. The same freedom that Citta carried. The freedom of a person who sees clearly what matters and what does not, and who has stopped wasting their finite breaths on the things that do not. Aging and illness and death and decay, these are already moving toward you. They are not waiting for you to get old. They are not scheduled for some distant year that you have not yet reached. They are arriving in every moment, in the graying of a hair, in the slowing of a step, in the ache that was not there last year. The practice of Maranasati is the practice of seeing this clearly, and instead of running, instead of hiding, turning toward it, the way you would turn toward a friend who is telling you something important, with attention, with respect, with the willingness to hear what is being said. This is the practice that sat underneath everything Citta built. The 5 observations gave him the framework. The understanding of consciousness and Kama gave him the why. But Maranasati, the moment-by-moment awareness of death, gave him the how. It was the engine of his daily life. The thing that kept the 5 observations alive in his body instead of his head. The thing that made every act of kindness feel urgent and every moment of attention feel precious. And it is available to everyone. Right now, in this breath, in whatever room you are sitting in, whatever time of night it is, whatever you were thinking about before you heard these words. You do not need to be a monk. You do not need years of training. You do not need to sit in a specific posture or chant a specific phrase or follow a specific program. You need to breathe in and know that you are breathing in, and then breathe out and know that you might not breathe in again. That is the entire practice. It takes no time at all. It costs nothing, and it changes everything. You can do it while standing in line at the grocery store. You can do it while sitting in traffic. You can do it while waiting for someone who is late, or while listening to someone who is talking too long, or while lying in bed unable to sleep. The practice does not require a special time or a special place. It requires only this breath and the willingness to meet it honestly. Citta practiced this for decades. In the kitchen, in the market, in the moments between customers and conversations and meals. He folded death awareness into the fabric of an ordinary life, and by the time the Devatar came to him, the fabric was so strong that even the most magnificent offer in the world could not tear it. The monks who heard the Buddha's teaching that day would have walked out of that gathering differently. They would have felt the ground under their feet more clearly. They would have noticed the quality of the light. They would have heard the birds with a freshness that comes from knowing, truly knowing, that this hearing might be the last time. The teaching did not make them sad. It made them awake. Some of them, walking back to their huts through the trees, would have felt for the first time the difference between the 5 observations as they had been practicing them and the 5 observations as the Buddha intended them. They had been sitting with the truth of death at arm's length, respectful, serious, sincere, and the Buddha had just told them, "That is too far. Bring it closer. Bring it inside the breath. Let it live in the space between this inhale and the next exhale." That is where the practice becomes real. And this is the difference between knowing about death and practicing death awareness. Knowing about death is information. It lives in the mind alongside everything else you know. Your phone number, the name of your first teacher, the capital of France. It is stored, filed, available when needed and ignored the rest of the time. Practicing death awareness is different. It is not stored anywhere. It lives in the breath. It moves with you. It changes the texture of the air you are breathing and the weight of the body you are sitting in and the sound of the voice you are hearing right now. It is not a thought about death. It is the presence that arises when the illusion of permanence has been set down, gently, breath by breath, the way you set down something heavy that you have been carrying so long you forgot it was there. And the setting down happens slowly. You do not master Maranasati in a week or a month. You practice it the way you learn a language, by living inside it, by using it every day, by making mistakes and returning and trying again. Some mornings the awareness will feel sharp and real, and you will move through the day with a clarity that touches everything. Other mornings the mind will resist. It will build its walls again. It will fill the present with plans and worries and the familiar noise of self-protection. This is normal. The practice is not about achieving a permanent state of awareness. The practice is about returning again and again to the breath that is happening right now. Over time, the returning becomes easier. The distance between forgetting and remembering gets shorter. The mind spends less time in the future and more time here. And the quality of here, when you are truly present in it, is unlike anything the future has ever offered you. Maranasati changes how you live. Every conversation becomes more honest. every choice becomes more clear. Every morning becomes a gift that you received without asking for it, and that could be taken back at any moment, without warning, without explanation, without appeal. The grudge you have been carrying becomes too heavy to hold. The love you have been holding back becomes too important to wait. The life you have been living on autopilot becomes a life you are living on purpose, because purpose is the only reasonable response to impermanence. And Maranasati also changes how you die, because the person who has been practicing death awareness with every breath for 10 years, or 20, or 40, that person does not meet death as a stranger. They meet it the way they have met it every day, in the breath, with attention, with the same calm presence that turned every ordinary morning into something luminous. When the body begins to fail, when the breath becomes shallow and the heartbeat slows, the mind that has been trained in Maranasati does not panic. It has rehearsed this moment 10,000 times. Every morning for decades, the mind held the awareness that this breath could be the last. And now, when the last breath actually approaches, the mind recognizes what is happening. It has been here before, in practice, in meditation, in every quiet moment between the inhale and the exhale. The territory is familiar. The mind knows how to be here, and it is at peace. This is the gift of Maranasati. It takes the most terrifying moment in a human life, the moment when the body stops and the mind must let go of everything it has held, and it makes that moment familiar, known, practiced. The way a musician who has played the same piece 1,000 times can play it in the dark, without thinking, without fear, because the music is in the hands. This is what sat underneath everything Citta built. The 5 observations gave him the framework. The understanding of consciousness and karma gave him the why. Maranasati, the breath-by-breath awareness of death, gave him the how. It was the engine of his daily life, the thing that kept the 5 observations alive in his body rather than filed away in his memory, the thing that made every act of kindness feel urgent and every morning feel like a door that might close at any time. And when the Devata came to him on his deathbed, he did not need to prepare. He had been preparing his entire life, breath by breath, mouthful by mouthful, day by day. The deathbed was simply the last moment of a practice he had been doing every single day. There was a layperson, an old man with a body that was breaking down, who proved what a lifetime of this practice looks like at the very end. His story is the simplest one in all of the Buddha's teachings about death, and it is the one that brings everything we have heard tonight to rest. An old man came to the Buddha one afternoon. His body was bent. His eyes were dim. He walked slowly and sat down heavily and said the kind of thing that only a person who has run out of time would say. He said, "I am old. My body is failing. I can barely make the journey to see you anymore. Please, teach me something I can carry with me." The Buddha did not teach him a meditation technique. He did not explain the 5 aggregates or the chain of dependent origination or the nature of consciousness. He looked at this old man, This ordinary person with an ordinary life and an ordinary body that was running out of time, and he said one sentence. He said, "Your body is indeed afflicted. It is fragile. Whoever would carry this body around and claim it is healthy for even a moment would be foolish. So train yourself like this. Though my body is afflicted, my mind will not be afflicted." That is the entire teaching. One sentence, 8 words at the center of it. My mind will not be afflicted. And if you have been listening tonight, if you have walked through everything we have walked through together, then you already understand why this sentence holds so much. Because it is the summary of everything. Every section, every story, every teaching, it all leads here. The body will break. This is what the 5 observations taught you. The body will age and sicken and die. Everything you love will change. These truths are not negotiable. They are the ground. What continues after the body breaks is the stream of your actions. This is what the fire metaphor showed you. There is no fixed self that survives intact. There is a process shaped by the quality of everything you have done and said and intended that moves from one set of conditions to the next. And the way to tend that stream, the way to keep the fire clean, is to hold death within the space of a single breath. This is what the monks learned. This is what Maranasati does. It keeps the teaching alive in the body, not filed away in the mind, so that every moment becomes an opportunity to plant something wholesome. And all of it, every practice, every teaching, every story, comes down to this one sentence that the Buddha gave to an old man with a failing body on an ordinary afternoon. Think about the arc of everything you have heard tonight. Citta refused the most magnificent worldly reward because he could see that even heaven is temporary. What gave him that clarity? The 5 observations, practiced every morning, stripped away the illusion of permanence. The teaching on consciousness showed him that no fixed self travels from life to life, and that the only thing that carries forward is the quality of his actions. Maranasati brought the awareness of death from the head into the body, into the breath, into every moment of every day. And underneath all of it, holding it all together, was this single understanding. The body will fail. The mind does not have to fail with it. This is the root. Without it, the 5 observations are just a list. Without it, Maranasati is just anxiety with a Pali name. Without it, the fire metaphor is just philosophy. The separation of body and mind is the foundation that makes every other teaching in the Buddha's approach to death practical and livable. Though my body is afflicted, my mind will not be afflicted. Let us sit with what this means. The body and the mind are not the same thing. This is something that most of us say we understand but have never truly felt. We live as though the body and the mind are one, as though what happens to the body happens to us, as though the body's condition is our condition. When the body is young and strong, we feel young and strong. When the body is tired, we say, "I am tired." When the body is in pain, we say, "I am in pain." The language itself fuses us to the body so completely that we cannot tell where the body ends and we begin. The Buddha's teaching to the old man is an act of gentle separation, the kind that does not tear or cut. It simply shows you a line that was always there, a line you never noticed because no one pointed it out. The body is afflicted. Yes. The body ages. The body gets sick. The body weakens and slows and eventually stops. This is true. This has always been true, and there is nothing you can do about it. The mind does not have to follow. This is the line. This is the separation. The body goes one way, toward decline, toward ending, toward the earth. The mind can go another way, toward clarity, toward peace, toward the kind of stillness that does not depend on the body being well. And this separation matters most at the moment of death. When the body is dying, when the breath is slowing and the warmth is leaving the skin, the untrained mind collapses into the body's experience. It grabs. It panics. It identifies so completely with the failing body that the failing feels like annihilation. Every wave of pain becomes I am in pain. Every loss of function becomes I am disappearing. Every breath that comes harder than the last becomes I am running out. The mind and the body have been fused together for so long that when the body begins to separate, the mind feels like it is being torn apart. The trained mind does something different. It does what it has practiced doing morning after morning, year after year. It watches. The breath slows and the mind notices. The warmth leaves and the mind notices. The body releases its grip on the systems that have been keeping it alive, and the mind observes this release the way it has observed every other change, with attention, with steadiness, with the quiet recognition that this is what bodies do. The pain is there. The trained mind does not deny the pain. The trained mind holds it, the way you would hold an injured bird, gently, without squeezing, knowing that the holding itself is the act of care. The body is ending. The mind is present for the ending. And because the mind has practiced this presence every day, because it has breathed in and out with the awareness that this breath could be the last, the ending does not come as a shock. It comes as a familiar step in a familiar direction. This is what the old man was being prepared for. The Buddha was not giving him philosophy. He was giving him a tool for the hardest moment of his life, the moment when the body would finally stop, and the only question that mattered was what the mind would do in that moment. Would it collapse? Or would it stand? Think about what happens when you are sick, seriously sick, the kind of sick where the body demands all of your attention, the fever that will not break, the pain that sits in one place and does not move, the heaviness in the chest that makes every breath feel like work. When this happens, if you watch carefully, you will notice that there are two layers of experience happening at the same time. There is the physical layer, the actual sensations in the body, the heat, the ache, the tightness. These are real. They are happening. They are the body doing what a sick body does. And then there is the mental layer, the layer that wraps itself around the physical sensations and multiplies them. The thought that says, this will never end. The thought that says, what if it gets worse? The thought that says, I cannot bear this. the thought that says, "I am falling apart." This mental layer, the worry, the fear, the story the mind tells about the body's condition, is where the real suffering lives. The body is in pain. That is one thing. The mind is terrified of the pain, and the terror doubles the suffering. The mind tells a story about the pain, and the story triples it. The mind projects the pain into the future, imagines it lasting forever, imagines it getting worse, and the projection makes it unbearable. You have felt this even in small ways. You wake up with a stiff neck, and the first thought is, what if this does not go away? You feel a twinge in your chest, and the first thought is this serious? You notice that your knees hurt more than they used to, and the first thought is, I am getting old. It will only get worse from here. In each case, the physical sensation is small. The mental response is enormous. The mind takes a twinge and builds a cathedral of worry around it. At the moment of death, this pattern reaches its peak. The body is sending the strongest signals it has ever sent, and the untrained mind is amplifying every single one. The result is a kind of doubled dying, the body dying its physical death, and the mind dying its own death of fear and confusion and resistance. Two deaths happening at once. This is what the Buddha wanted to prevent. The Buddha's teaching to the old man was this: the body's pain is the body's business. Let the body have its experience. Let it age. Let it ache. Let it do what bodies do. Your job is the mind. Your job is to train the mind so that when the body breaks, the mind does not break with it. This training is not suppression. It is not pretending the pain is not there. It is not gritting your teeth and forcing a smile while the body screams. The training is seeing clearly, seeing that the body's pain and the mind's suffering are two different events, seeing that the body can be in pain while the mind remains steady, seeing that the ache in the knee is in the knee, and the awareness that knows the ache is somewhere else entirely. The ache is physical. The awareness is not. The ache is in the body. The awareness is in the mind. And the mind, when it has been trained, can hold the body's pain the way a mother holds a crying child, with tenderness, with patience, without becoming the crying. There is a version of this that you have already experienced, even if you have never meditated a day in your life. Think of a time when you were in physical discomfort, a headache, a sore back, a sprained ankle, and something happened that completely absorbed your attention. A phone call with unexpected good news. A child doing something that made you laugh. A scene in a film that gripped you so completely that for 10 minutes you forgot about the pain. The pain did not go away. The headache was still there. The back was still sore. The ankle was still swollen. What changed was the mind's relationship to the pain. For those 10 minutes, the mind was attending to something else, and the pain, while physically present, was no longer the center of your experience. The Buddha's training takes this natural capacity and deepens it. It teaches you to direct the mind's attention deliberately, through practice, through the daily work of sitting with impermanence, through the 5 observations, through Maranasati, through the repeated act of seeing the body clearly as a process and recognizing that you are the awareness watching this process. The deepening happens in stages. At first, you can hold the separation between body and mind for a few seconds. The knee aches, and you notice, for a brief moment, that the ache and the awareness of the ache are two different things. Then the mind collapses back into the pain, and you are fused again. This is normal. It is the beginning. Over weeks and months, the separation holds for longer. You can sit with discomfort and watch it without being consumed by it. You notice the mind's stories, the "this will never end," the "what if it gets worse," and you see them as stories rather than facts. The stories lose their authority. They still arise. The mind still generates them, the way clouds still form even on a clear day. But you no longer mistake them for the sky. Over years, the separation becomes natural. The body does what it does, ages, aches, changes, and the mind holds all of it with a steadiness that no longer requires effort. The steadiness becomes the default. The way the body breathes without being told to breathe, the mind holds its ground without being told to hold. And this steadiness is not cold. This is important to understand because people sometimes hear the teaching about separating body and mind and imagine a person who is detached, removed, watching the body from a distance, clinical and uninvolved, like a scientist observing an experiment. That is not what the Buddha was teaching. The trained mind is not detached. It is present, deeply, tenderly, fully present. It feels everything the body feels. It does not block the pain or numb the sensation or build a wall between itself and the body's experience. It holds the experience, all of it, the way you hold a sleeping child, with total attention, with warmth, with the kind of care that comes from knowing how fragile and precious the thing you are holding actually is. The difference between the trained mind and the untrained mind is not the amount of feeling. It is the amount of confusion. The untrained mind feels pain and thinks I am being destroyed. The trained mind feels pain and thinks the body is in pain. The sensation is the same. The relationship to the sensation is completely different. And that difference, that small shift in the relationship, is the difference between a death filled with terror and a death filled with peace. When this recognition deepens to this level, when it becomes the way you naturally see rather than something you have to remind yourself of, the fear of the body's decline begins to soften. The grip loosens. The panic that used to arise when the body sent a signal of pain or weakness finds less and less ground to stand on, because you are no longer confusing yourself with the body. You are no longer equating the body's ending with your ending. The body can age. You are watching it age. The body can hurt. You are aware of the hurting. The body can fail. And the mind, trained by years of gentle attention, stands beside it like a companion, present, warm, unbroken. This is what Citta carried. This is why the Devata's offer did not tempt him. He had spent decades learning to stand in his own mind, independent of what the body was doing. When the body was strong, the mind was clear. When the body was failing, the mind was still clear. The body's condition had become irrelevant to the mind's peace, because the identification between the two had been dissolved, gently, over many years, through the kind of practice we have been describing all night. Think about what his final moments looked like through this lens. The body was in its last hours. The breath was slowing. The family was gathered around, afraid, confused, assuming he was losing his mind because he was speaking to beings they could not see. And Citta, inside all of this, was not lost. The body was breaking. The mind was clear enough to see the Devatar, clear enough to evaluate their offer, clear enough to refuse it, clear enough to turn to his family and teach them the three things that mattered most. His mind was not afflicted. His body was dying and his mind was teaching. This is the sentence the Buddha gave the old man, alive in a real person, at the real moment of death. This is proof that the training works. That a human being, an ordinary human being, can reach the end of a life and carry a mind so well tended that the body's ending does not touch it. And this is what the old man who came to the Buddha was being offered. He was not being offered a cure for his body. He was not being told that his back would straighten or his eyes would clear. The body was going to continue doing what bodies do. He was being offered something better. Freedom inside the decline. Peace inside the breaking. The knowledge that even as the house falls, the one living in the house can remain whole. This is the teaching that the whole world needs and almost no one hears. Because we live in a culture that worships the body. That measures health by how the body looks and how the body performs and how long the body lasts. And when the body fails, as every body eventually will, we have nothing left. We have invested everything in the one thing that was guaranteed to break. And when it breaks, we break with it. The Buddha was offering an alternative. Invest in the mind. Build something that the body's decline cannot touch. Cultivate a quality of awareness that grows stronger even as the body grows weaker. This is possible. Citta proved it. The old man received the teaching for it. And you, wherever you are tonight, can begin it. A life without regret does not mean a perfect life. It does not mean a life where nothing went wrong, where every decision was correct and every relationship was healed and every opportunity was seized. No one has that life. A life without regret means a life where the mind was tended, where, day after day, in the quiet of the morning, in the noise of the afternoon, in the stillness of the night, the mind was gently pointed in the direction of clarity, of kindness, of honesty, of attention. It means the morning you woke up angry at your partner, and instead of feeding the anger, you noticed it. You sat with it. You watched it rise and change shape and eventually pass, the way every storm passes, and you spoke to your partner from the quiet that came after. That morning was mind tending. That morning was practice. It means the afternoon your child did something that frightened you, and instead of reacting from fear, you paused. You breathed. You responded from the part of you that loves rather than the part that controls. That afternoon was practice. It means the evening you sat alone with the knowledge that you are getting older, that the body you relied on is changing, that the face in the mirror is not the face you remember, and instead of turning on the television to drown the thought, you stayed with it. You let the truth settle, and you went to bed lighter than you have been in years. That evening was practice. A life made of these moments, hundreds of them, thousands of them, scattered through the ordinary days like seeds dropped in soil. That is a life without regret. When the body finally reaches the point where it can no longer carry you, the mind that has been tended through all of those small moments will know what to do. It will stand. It will be steady. It will look at the body's ending with the same attention it has practiced in every other moment, and it will not break. The 5 observations are the morning watering. Maranasati is the sunlight. The understanding of impermanence is the soil. And the sentence the Buddha gave the old man, "My mind will not be afflicted," is the root. Everything grows from here. Everything returns to here. When you strip away the stories and the metaphors and the detailed teachings, when you come down to the very bottom of what the Buddha taught about death, this is what remains. The body will go. The mind does not have to follow. And the mind that does not follow, the mind that has been trained to stand on its own ground, that mind is free. Free in sickness, free in old age, free at the moment of death, free in whatever comes after, because the quality of the mind is the quality of the fuel, and a mind that has been tended with care burns clean and bright and warm, no matter what happens to the body it once lived in. You are listening to this tonight in a body that is aging. Right now, the cells are turning over. The hair is changing. The skin is doing what skin does after it has been exposed to years of sun and wind and gravity. This is happening whether you notice it or not, whether you accept it or not. The body is on its own schedule, and it does not consult you. And the mind that is aware of all this, the mind that is hearing these words and making sense of them, that mind is yours to train. It is the one thing in this entire arrangement that responds to your effort. The body does what it will do. The world does what it will do. Other people do what they will do. The only thing that bends toward your intention, that grows in the direction you point it, that becomes what you practice it becoming, is the mind. And the beautiful thing, the thing the Buddha wanted the old man to understand, is that you can begin at any point. It does not matter how old you are. It does not matter how sick you are. It does not matter how much of your life has already been spent living without this awareness. The mind responds to training the way a garden responds to water. Even a garden that has been dry for years will begin to green when the rain comes. The dryness does not make the garden hopeless. The dryness makes the first drop of rain more precious. The old man who came to the Buddha that afternoon was not young. He had already lived most of his life. His body was already far along in its decline. And the Buddha did not say, "You should have started earlier." He did not say, "The body is too far gone for the mind to matter." He said, "Train yourself. Now, with whatever time you have left, with whatever body you are sitting in. The training begins the moment you decide to begin." This is why the Buddha gave the old man that particular teaching on that particular afternoon. The old man could not change his body. His eyes were going to continue to dim. His back was going to continue to bend. And one day, sooner rather than later, his body was going to stop working entirely. The Buddha did not pretend otherwise. He did not offer comfort that was not true. He said, "Yes, the body is fragile. Anyone who says otherwise is foolish." And then he gave the old man the only thing worth giving, the teaching that the mind is separate from the body's fate, that the mind can be trained, that the training is available to everyone, monks and lay people, young and old, healthy and sick, and that a person who trains their mind, even a person whose body is failing, can meet death without being destroyed by it. This is the teaching that Citta carried. This is what the 5 observations prepare you for. This is what the fire metaphor illuminates. This is what Maranasati keeps alive in every breath. And this is what the Buddha was pointing to when he spoke to the old man in the simplest language he knew. The body will go. Train the mind so it does not go with it. If you begin tonight, even with one breath, you have already started. If you sit tomorrow morning with the 5 observations, even for a few minutes, you have already planted the first seed. If you carry the awareness of death into one conversation, one meal, one quiet moment with someone you love, the practice is already working in you. You do not need to understand everything tonight. You do not need to remember every teaching or every metaphor or every story. You need to remember one sentence. Though my body is afflicted, my mind will not be afflicted. Carry this with you the way the old man carried it. Into the morning, into the afternoon, into the evening, into the years ahead. Let it sit in the background of your day, quiet and steady, like a lamp burning in a window. You do not need to look at the lamp every moment. You just need to know it is there. And when the difficult moment comes, when the body sends a message that frightens you, when the doctor's face changes, when the phone rings at an hour that phones should not ring, the lamp will be there. The sentence will be there. The training will hold. Because you practiced. Because you tended the mind. Because you chose, on an ordinary evening, listening to these words, to begin. The old man walked away from the Buddha that afternoon with the same body he arrived with. His back was still bent. His eyes were still dim. His legs still ached with every step. Nothing about the body had changed. The road home was the same road, the same dust, the same stones he had to watch for because his feet could no longer feel them as well as they used to. Everything that made his life difficult was still there. The aging, the illness, the shortness of breath on the uphill stretches, the knowledge that this body was not going to get better, that the direction of travel was fixed, and that one day the road would end. And something in the mind had shifted. Something had landed. A single sentence, dropped into the right soil at the right moment, had begun to grow. The teaching was simple enough to hold in one hand. It did not require years of study or months of retreat. It required only this, the willingness to stop confusing the body's story with his own. And the walk home felt different. The weight was still there, but the weight was in the body. The ache was still there, but the ache was in the legs. The dimness was still there, but the dimness was in the eyes. The mind, for the first time in a very long while, was light. Maranasati is not something you do once. It is not a teaching you hear on a quiet evening and carry for a few days until the weight of daily life pushes it aside. It is a daily practice. The 5